Loatide Nieuport 1600, Vivictus Magazine Game 105. These were the results of the Bukoi's wing activation here, from the charge and interception, successful interception by the Dutch cavalry there, cuirassiers actually. Just some things that I was either reminded of or learned in the process here. So the first unit, the first of the attackers, so both of the defenders took a loss. That is the bare minimum. The defender always takes at least one loss, so they're flipped to their disordered side. This attacker took one loss, so he's flipped to his disordered side and retreated too. The first thing to point out is that all attackers, shared the same fate. So the musketeers here were supporting those gendarmes attacking the cuirassiers there. So the musketeers had to take a loss and retreat as well, and that's what happened over here. This was a devastating result. I think the Spanish rolled the worst possible result. So they took 3 losses and retreat too. But trying to think. 3 losses is automatically a rout status. So when they're routed, they're flipped to face their side of the board, and they're moved 2 hexes back, and then they're going to have that marker put on them. These mounted arquebusiers supported this Spanish cavalry in that attack, so they shared the same fate. One more thing over here. So when the musketeers were here, my question was, can they interpenetrate and pass through the tercios, which, by the way, would not make much sense. But no, in rules-wise, they cannot. So then the question is, can they not retreat normally, and so do they have to roll on the unable to retreat table? But no, the rules say that even though they have to move towards their friendly side of the board, that's only if possible. They can move otherwise if it's the only option. So I consider moving this way to be an option open to them, and then they go this way towards their friendly side of the board. They're not turned around. You're only turned around facing your side of the board if you're routed. These guys just retreated, and so they maintain the same facing. This, by the way, ends. This should end Bukoi's activation. So I'm going to flip him over to his finished side. I'm going to put his charge order under him and put him on there. And so Bukoi's wing is done, and I think that we have, I think all the charge orders have been executed. So now we go to the march orders, and who goes first? So there's one march order. So looking over the battlefield, we've got 1 march order left on the Spanish side and 2 march orders left on the Dutch side. So actually, I think it probably goes to the side with the most number of orders at that precedence level. So I think we're going to go over to a Dutch march order. Even though I switched over to the Dutch side, when I was thinking about it again, I realized I can't be progressing too quickly here. There's more decision making here than your basic war game. So Bukoi did his wing activation, but actually, especially because they were so soundly repulsed across the line there, I think that he should try to continue. I think the plan is he tries to continue, and if he's successful, then he tries to change his order, assuming that that's all possible. So to continue, he has a charge order still, again, right there. To continue, he needs to roll 3 or less. There are no modifiers. His command value is a 0 there, so that's no modifier. It's not all cavalry, and the wing commander Bukoy there is not adjacent to a non-broken enemy. Oh my, he gets it. All right, so he's going to continue. So I guess I'll look at order change. Oh, by the way, I did think about, let me go in order here. So the first thing is he's not done. I should not have flipped him over. I should have considered continuation before flipping him over. All right, so he has continued. There is preemption, and I did think about that. But let me go in order here. So continuation attempt, he did succeed, so he goes back to A, which is preemption attempt. And I did think, we have tempo way back here as my reserve for the Dutch. Solms is here. I do want to move Solms up to kind of fill this gap here, but that's not, I'd already decided that wasn't worth a preemption. If Solom, actually I take that back. Solom should try to preempt here, because if he's successful, I think that forces Bukoy to be finished. So not only does Solom's get up here to fill this gap with his march order, but that will prevent Bukoy from trying to restore his wing there. So, okay, we are going to do preemption attempt. So preemption for Solms, who has a march order, is 3 or less. He also has a command value of 0, so no modifier. It's not all cavalry because he has cavalry and infantry here, and here, and here. And he's not adjacent to an unbroken enemy. So to preempt, he needs a 3 or less. Okay, he rolls a 7. Okay, so he's not successful. Something happens there. Okay, I thought there was something that needed to be done. This is all memory from playing Kirchholm 1605. There's a sans reactive, no continuation marker, that right there. So because he failed in his preemption attempt, he's marked no continuation. And that just means that later on, when he, a wing commander marked no continuation may not attempt, let me back up. If a preemption attempt fails, the commander's marked no continuation. That's that right there. And may not attempt continuation. Also, a wing commander marked no continuation may not attempt a preemption. So basically, he will only be able to do his normal activation later. So now we'll pick up with Bukoy's continuation. Okay, so as I indicated before, this is Bukoy's continuation, and his plan is to try to change his order to, I was thinking about a rally order. Let me review march order. Under a march order, units may move. Oh, I know why. It's a lot easier to change from charge. He has charge orders now. It's a lot easier to go from charge to rally than charge to march. That's why. So he is going to go to rally, and then he'll try to go quickly from rally to march. Okay. This is the table, and it's kind of important to see the dynamics here, right? He has a charge order, 2 or less to go to march, 5 or less to go to rally. Quite a bit, substantially easier to go from charge to rally. Now from rally, it's definitely easier to go from rally to march than from rally back to charge. So, but he's going to try to go to rally first, and then quickly go from rally to march. So 5 or less. There are modifiers, but none of them apply. There are modifiers there. Oh no, he rolled a 7. So, oh, that's really not good. That's really not good, because now they are still going to have to end their move closer to the enemy unit. So, this is a big change. He's not going to be able to reorganize his guys, and they're basically going right back into the fight, because the Tercio is going to move up. The musketeers and the cavalry are going to have to move up. And I think I have to do route movement, but I'll check on that. Okay, so this is another example of how it's going to, I think we're going to get some intensive action and interaction. I think this is the very, very heart of the brilliance of the design. Okay, so first of all, very interesting. I did not realize that the route phase comes entirely after the whole activation phase. So when we're all done with all of the activations, then units that have these route markers must execute route movement. So it's not when you get around to being activated again. So that's handled later. They have a charge order, which means they're not gonna, there is no possibility of rallying at all, period. So what I know is that this musketeer unit, the Tercio, cuirassier unit, and the gendarmes, disordered, so we have disordered musketeers and disordered gendarmes. We have good order cuirassiers and good order tercios. They all have to end one hex closer to the closest enemy. So, well, actually, I guess, I think I'm gonna advance him once, because, I wonder if him moving forward here generates reaction movement from the mounted arquebusiers. So interestingly, there is reaction movement, but it doesn't really apply in this case. In other words, I'm not going to do it, so I won't stop. I won't pause to go over it, but there is reaction movement. So I'm going to move the musketeers up there. I'm just going to leave them there. I'm not going to be any more aggressive with those musketeers. On the other hand, this is going to be reaction movement. I think that, I was going to have the cavalry here charge, which was going to generate interception attempt, which might have brought the Dutch cavalry adjacent to the Tercio, but I'm going to flip this around. I'm actually going to advance the Tercio, see what the Dutch cavalry does, then make the decision what to do with the Spanish cavalry back here. In other words, these guys, they have a movement allowance of 4. That's movement allowance of 4. They are going to move forward in the difficult terrain 2. Oops, I flipped them over by accident. They are disordered. Now, they moved adjacent. What's important here, I forgot that the disordered cavalry have half their movement allowance. So actually right now, the 2 units of cuirassiers have the same movement allowance as the Tercio. So, okay, let me see. Okay, in fact, this does give me an opportunity to go over reaction movement entirely. So first of all, the Tercio has spent 2 movement points to move into the difficult forward in the difficult terrain there. Reaction movement, only simple units in normal or disordered status or commanders can carry out reaction movement. So these are simple units. That means they're square units. So Tercios can't do reaction movement. The double units, actually I should say any double unit, they happen to be Tercios in this game, but these double units cannot do reaction movement. So simple units that are either good order or disordered, or commanders can carry out reaction movement. Even if they've already been activated, they have been activated previously this turn. There is no limit to the number of reaction movements that a unit can do. These units can only engage in reaction movement if their movement allowance with disorder effects, they're at 4 again, this is what I was looking at, is equal to or greater than that of the unit causing the reaction. So the Tercio moving forward is causing the reaction movement. Their movement's 4. the cuirassiers have a disordered movement of 4, so it is equal to or greater than the tercio. And if they have lost to the unit provoking the reaction, obviously they do, because you always have line of sight adjacent. Each unit can only attempt a reaction movement once per enemy wing activation. So this is Bukhoi's, this is their one and only reaction movement attempt. A unit using reaction movement cannot engage in defensive fire in response to the specific action that prompted the movement. Now I see what that means. They can't fire on the tercio and do the reaction movement. So we have facing changes and we have withdrawals. Let's talk facing change first. If an enemy unit spends MPs or rallies at a distance of 2 hexes or fewer, the unit can change facing by 1 vertex for infantry and 2 hexes for cavalry. Okay, and then there's withdrawal. If an enemy unit spends MPs or rallies at a distance of 2 hexes or fewer, that's this case here, the unit can spend its full movement allowance to move away. It cannot become adjacent to an enemy unit. That's fine. They just want to get back here. It cannot become adjacent. This option is only available for infantry units under rally or cavalry under any orders approached by infantry. So this is cavalry being approached by infantry. The active unit that prompted the reaction, regardless of the type of reaction movement, can then pick up. So I'm really not sure about that. So does that mean that oh wow, they're not going to be able to get that far away? Alright, in this case I'm ditching the option to withdrawal move, because I'm assuming that they do movement normally in every other regard. They can only move into their front hexes, so the cavalry would have to move 1, or have to change facing by 2 vertexes, which cost 2 movement points. So that would have to be, 1, and then 2, and then 3, 4. Then they've used up their movement allowance. The tercio would move forward anyways and combat the cavalry in the rear, so from rear side. So that's, I guess, because they're disordered, that means that's not a realistic option. So in that case, they probably should just do defensive fire. Okay, first things first, each of the cuirassiers are going to conduct defensive fire against the tercio there. There are no modifiers that apply, so for a C unit on the fire table they need a 6 or greater. Oh, they got a 6 for a hit, and then 5 for a miss. So they got 1 hit on the tercio. Okay, so the tercio took 1 hit, and then it fired at the cuirassier unit there. It spent. Oh, that's interesting. So it had 4 movement points before. It spent 2 to move forward. Then it was fired on and was flipped. Now its movement allowance is 2, and it spent 2. So the question is, does it have 2 movement points left over to fire? They missed anyways, but I wonder about that. Well, I'll move on, but because they missed, but I'm not sure if that was allowed or not. So now we're going to have the cavalry still need to advance. All right, this is one of those situations again where I don't think there's anything that prevents this. So when this cuirassier unit moves forward too in the difficult terrain there, the cuirassiers here want to try to intercept. They do have a +1 modifier because they are disrupted. So they need to roll a 4 or less because they have a charge order current. Oh wow! So 2 + 1 is 3, which is 4 or less. So they intercept. So they move forward. I've got my intercept again. And obviously the cuirassiers lose their charge. So now Oh, that's interesting. So now when the gendarmes move forward, this is normal move. They can't charge because they're not going to have 2 hex movement with the same. Oh, that's funny. No, they're not. So they're going to move forward, and I guess the disordered cuirassiers there who are intercepting, I guess they still get defensive fire. So all these little things change everything. That's what I like about the design. Everything has the impact. Everything has the possibility to have real impact. So the cuirassiers did defensive fire, and they rolled a 7 when they needed 6 or greater. So they get a hit on the moving gendarme there. So they're already disordered with the movement of 5. So they moved here. They spent 2 to move forward in the difficult terrain, and they had 3 left over, which would have been enough to fire, except that's not going to happen now because they go up to shaken, and being shaken, there certainly is no more movement, but they're only eligible for defensive fire. So I think everybody is moved, so I think that we go to resolving the close combat. Talk about close combat now, because obviously we have adjacent units here, and we have adjacent units here. So this is the general procedure. Active units with enemies in their frontal hexes can perform close combat. Inactive units that have not been designated as participating in the combat and that have active units in their frontal hexes can perform reaction close combat. I mention that because basically if Bucquoy with his tercio here that's disordered, if it does not combat the disordered cuirassiers there, the cuirassiers get to do reaction close combat against them. So you know what, just to show how this works, I'm gonna have Bucquoy not do close combat there, but they will do close combat here. Yeah, so these good order cuirassiers are going to close combat the oh no, wait, they were the interceptors, so they are the attackers. Never mind. So it's both. So I guess another way to put it is Bucquoy is going to choose not to do combat, in which case it's a reaction combat, and this is an interception combat. Point is, these are done before. These reaction close combats are resolved first, followed by the close combats performed by the active player. Yeah, okay. So I think that's how that works. Let's do the interception first, and then we'll do the reaction combat there. All right, let me show how this works. So these are the modifiers here, and the one that matters is the difference between morale values. None of the other ones apply. So what it is the Dutch cuirassiers have a morale of 6 to the 7 Spanish morale, which is -1. They roll a 7, which is pretty good. -1 is 6. So you go to the combat table here, you find the result over here, modified result. It's A1, D1, R1. So how we do that, A1, attacker is going to take 1 loss, defender is going to take 1 loss, then the defender is going to retreat 1. So what that means is the Dutch cavalry were already disordered. So now they go up 1 level or down 1 level, however you want to look at it. So that's 1 loss. 1 loss for the defenders to flip them over to their disordered side. Then Spanish cuirassiers are the defenders, so they retreat 1 hex. I don't know if advance after combat's mandatory there, but now we're going to do this combat over here. Similar deal. I just want to show this because I think part of the tercio's strength shows here. Okay, so this is the Dutch cavalry there, cuirassiers. They were already disordered. They rolled a 2, which is pretty bad anyways. They subtract 1 because their morale was 1 worse than the tercio, so that's a -1 die roll modifier. And then I should have said, I don't think I've ever said yet, there is a table of interaction. So the attacking cuirassiers against defending tercios have a -1 anyways. So that's a -2. That's a net -2. So that means that the final result is on the 0, right? Because a 2 minus 2 is 0. So it's attacker 2, R2, D1. So attacker loses 2, then the defender loses 1, then the attacker retreats 2. It doesn't matter the retreats because losing 2 makes it rout. And when it routs, it's going to flip around and it's going to move 2 hexes back and be marked with the rout marker. The tercios took 1 loss as shaken. So they were disordered earlier. And now they are shaken.